West Coast. My name is Mary Lanier. I'm the military liaison in North Carolina. I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us today. I want to go over a few just housekeeping items before we get started and get into the webinar itself. This webinar is being recorded today. I need you to type in your contact information in the chat box, especially if you would like to get a CU, and I will email you the certificate and the evaluation. Maybe I should wait a few more minutes. Okay. So, and then we're going to also hold the questions until the end of the webinar. And you can just type your questions that you may have at the end. And then I will read Clint and we'll do it that way. So for those of you that are not familiar with the Barry Robinson Center, the Barry Robinson Center is a nonprofit, 100% connected residential treatment facility. We take children and adolescents ages 6 through 17 who are experiencing emotional, behavioral, and/or psychiatric problems. If you would like more information about the program itself, I would suggest you visit our website, or you can contact myself, or you can contact the admissions office directly. Wow, it's great to see everybody on here. A lot of folks. But anyway, today I have the pleasure of having Clint Germond with me. And Clint actually works for the Barry Robinson Center. He came to work at the Barry Robinson Center in 2016. He works with our younger kids, the boys, ages 6 through 11. He entered the mental health field in 2002, and he received his first play therapy certification in 2013. Then he went on in 2019 and received his certificate as a supervisor, registered play therapist supervisor. And he was very fortunate to have trained as a Adlerian Play Therapist under the founder, Terry Kaufman. And Clint just recently in December received his Adlerian therapy certification. So anyway, we are very fortunate to have Clint, and without further ado, Clint Germond.
Hey everybody. Yeah, I'm Clint Germond, and let me share my PowerPoint. So let me a second. I've practiced. Okay. All right. So yes, as Mary mentioned, I'm Clint, and I will be sharing a very, and I can't say it enough, very brief introduction to Adlerian Play Therapy, and give you kind of a sense of how we use it in residential treatment. Hopefully maybe give you some ideas on how you might be able to how you might be able to use it. So, okay, let's see. So what do I hope to accomplish today? One, I hope to not read the slides to you, but this one, yes. So I hope to be able to, for those of you who are not familiar with play therapy, I hope at the end you're able to define play therapy and be able to understand why it's used with children. I hope that you're able to identify both the 4 crucial C's and 4 personality priorities, and identify what they are and understand how we use them in Adlerian Play Therapy. And I hope that you're able to identify at least 3 basic play therapy skills. But I would add a 5th one. I hope that I'm interesting enough and I get my passion for play therapy across in such a way that if some of you aren't, knee deep in play therapy currently, that I excite you enough that you go out and learn a little bit more about it. So my next one is, who am I and why should you listen to me? Which Mary kind of covered. I've been a therapist at the Barry Robinson Center for 5 years. I've been in the mental health field since 2002. I've been postgraduate experience since 2007. The thing that I'm most proud of, and the opportunity that I think I enjoy, or the opportunity that has been most special to me, has been getting to know Terry, spending time with her, and learning from her, and getting to be part of her trainings and part of now her organization, LEPT, the League of Extraordinary Adlerian Play Therapists. So that's really what I'm most proud of. Moving on to what is play therapy and why is it used? I love this video, so I wanted to share it with you. This is introducing Andrew. Everybody's probably familiar with it, but hopefully some of you aren't, because it's a real treat. So let me play it. This was created by the American Association for Play Therapy. Gosh, it's got to be about 5 or 6 years ago now. So let me just play this quick.
Oh, hey, Andrew, how was school today?
Well, it was a very frustrating day. Tommy was teasing me about my haircut, and that was embarrassing. As a way of coping with my embarrassment, I became angry. I'm ashamed to admit it, dear mother, but I could not resist striking Tommy with my fist. While this act of emotional release did offer a moment's respite from my embarrassment, the victory was short-lived. The next thing I knew, Tommy had immobilized me with a headlock and gave me what is referred to colloquially as a swirly.
This isn't how kids communicate, but they do communicate in other ways. Play is a child's first language. When a child plays, they express thoughts and feelings that would otherwise remain hidden. That's why play therapy can be a powerful tool for addressing a child's cognitive, behavioral, and emotional challenges. Licensed mental health practitioners use play therapy to help children process their experiences and develop more effective strategies for managing their world. To learn more about play therapy and registered play therapists, visit a4pt.org.
Oh.
I really just need a chocolate milk on the rocks and a long soak in the tub.
I love that. I mean, that is probably my favorite commercial. Now, and at the risk of ruining the joke, it's funny because kids aren't miniature adults. They don't sit and talk the way that I'm, in theory, speaking with you. They do. They do. So how do we communicate? We play, right? That's how they express themselves, and that's how we communicate with them. It's not because they don't want to. It's not because they don't want to sit down and talk with us. It's because they haven't developed the vocabulary or thinking skills that they need to be able to do that. Being a kid is kind of fundamentally different from being an adult. So what do? We play because toys are the child's words and play is their language. And of course, Gary Landreth of person-centered or child-centered play therapy fame. So do we just hop down on the floor and just start playing with them? Oh no, hold your horses, everybody. We do not do that, right? Because play therapy is the systemic use of a theoretical model to establish an interpersonal process wherein trained play therapists use the therapeutic powers of play to help clients prevent or resolve psychosocial difficulties and achieve optimal growth and development. And I apologize now if it's an issue for anybody, but Terry Gottman is one of the most quotable people I think I've ever met. She's got, at least I think so. She's got a quote for everything, and she always says, "In Adlerian Play Therapy, we do not throw spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks. We are intentional with our interventions." So what I want to kind of draw your attention to is the systemic use of a theoretical model to establish interpersonal processes, right? So we have to have kind of a framework that we're looking at the problem from. Child-centered framework is very different from Adlerian's framework, which is very different from TheraPlay, right? So it helps us define how we see the kid, helps us define how we see the problem, and then it creates a roadmap for us to be able to intervene. So, how do Adlerians kind of see the problem? Well, I'm happy you asked. So right now I'm gonna, and again, I can't say brief enough, right? I'm trying to do in probably about 40 minutes what, a real true study of it would take years and years and years. So just introducing some of the basic concepts of Adlerian. First, we'll start with how they conceptualize, then we'll talk about basic play therapy skills, and then some Adlerian strategies. But so I want to talk about the crucial C's first. What are the crucial C's? They're characteristics or qualities that, after research, was found to be the characteristics that successful kids were found to have, or characteristics that, if children were going to be successful, they needed. So first, I'm going to just kind of define each of them, and then I want to go back and talk about how we might foster if one or two, or gosh, I tell you, by the time you get to residential, all four are low. So, courage, of course. I'm going to try not to define the word with the word itself, but it's courage is defined by a person's willingness to try new things without the guarantee of success. And that's probably how courage is actually defined. But with the crucial C's, that's how it's defined as well. Connection is, surprise, surprise, a person's willingness and ability to make a connection. Now that comes in three parts. And when I first got into the mental health field, and I, was good at connecting with people, because and that's kind of why we get into it, right? We were all pretty good connectors. Before I really had a framework to understand this, I would find that when the kids were with me, they were wonderful at connecting. They did great stuff. They connected. They developed real relationships. It was just amazing to be part of. And then I would talk to their families, and they weren't connecting there. I would talk to the school people. They weren't connecting there. I would talk in the milieu, because I started in a psych hospital many years ago when I first started in this field. And it was like, come on, guys, this kid's a wonderful connector. What's your problem? But when I really started to get into Adlerian, I discovered that there's three parts, right? There's the desire to connect, there's the skills to connect, and then there's the confidence in one's ability to connect. So what I was inadvertently experiencing was I was meeting these kids that had a desire to connect, but didn't have the skills. But that's okay. I'll just go 100% and connect with you, which was a good experience for them, but it wasn't really helping them to then generalize the skills outside of the session. So once I realized that, it really it was like a light bulb went off for me. So then I was able to really start focusing on social skills and connecting skills, and it started to do even better. So being capable, that's, can a kid take care of themselves? Can they do the basic things to take care of themselves? Do they own their behaviors? And again, there's three parts for that too. There's the being good at things, there's knowing you're good at things, and then there's owning that you're good at things. And my example for that would be, I once knew somebody that was a phenomenal singer. He was good at it, right? Step one, met. Step two, he knew he was good at it. Everybody was always telling him he was good at it, but he could not own that he was good at it. He would always just kind of just brush off any compliments. So his capable was low because he couldn't own it. He has since, I think, gotten a lot better with it. And finally, there's the sense of count. Does the person feel significant? And again, that kind of comes in three flavors, if you will. There's the knowing, I'm enough. I don't have to be any more than I am. I'm enough. Then there's the conditionally acceptable, where they are acceptable if they meet some type of external criterion. Are they the smartest person in their class? Are they the funniest person? Are they the tallest, the most athletic? And then there's just the downright unacceptable. So now let me just quick go through just ways that we would kind of foster some of those. I'll give some examples for each. So courage, we'd want to really return responsibility, break things down into smaller pieces to kind of help them. We would meta-communicate, we do that a lot in Adlerian, about the anxiety around making mistakes. For connection, we would want to work hard on developing the relationship early on, really help them with that in the therapy before we could really do much of anything else. We'd explore the value of relationships, if they were kind of lacking the desire. And we'd role play a lot on skills. It could be as simple as, okay, when you get on the phone, you greet the person, share a fact about your day, ask about a fact for their day, boom, 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 boom. And just practice the heck out of those things. With capable, we want to encourage. If Adlerian play therapy is anything, it is encouraging, right? We acknowledge and we notice that kids, when they come to therapy, are discouraged. So what do? We acknowledge it. We encourage. We really focus on assets and strength, making kids more aware of assets. That could take the form of a strengths bombardment. That could take the form of a sand tray built around skills or strengths. And we do really easy things like juggling plastic bags, something you can't fail at, just to really build that up. With count, we want to really just be genuinely super excited to see the kid. And we don't want to fall in the trap of reinforcing their conditional acceptance. You get a kid that's always telling you a science fact or whatnot. Chances are they're telling you that because they only count if they're the smartest kid in the room. So we want to not draw attention to that. And we want to really hone in on, I'm just happy to see you because you're you kind of thing. We might even meta-communicate about, sometimes once we get further in the sessions, you think that the only way that you count is to be very, very bright. But I like you just for who you are. Gosh, I'm having a Mr. Rogers moment here. Good guy. So now moving on to personality priorities. Now that's the most important aspect of a person's striving for belonging. And that is kind of like the primary way that they look for belonging and significance in situations. So how do we identify that? There's four of them, a lot of fours in Adlerian, right? There's a lot of quadrants, I suppose. So the way that we identify them is we look at them in stressful situations. So what are they attempting to avoid and what positive purpose are they striving to achieve? And usually people have a primary and a secondary. So let me just kind of quick go through them and talk a little bit about each of them. So no, comfort, surprise, surprise, is a person that wants to be comfortable. A person that is personality, whose primary personality priority is comfort. They're easygoing. They seek to avoid stress, but they can experience underachievement. Now, that's not always true. And one of the things that I like to point out, I like to kind of talk about my wife. My wife is a high comfort person, but she's a nurse anesthetist. She's got a master's in nursing. She's advanced nurse practice. And, she helps put people under anesthesia, watches them, keeps them alive, and then brings them out. Seems like a high stress job, but for her, she really thinks that that's less stressful than being a regular foreign nurse. So, she was motivated by comfort. She was able to kind of do kind of a cost benefit analysis and say, yeah, in the end, I'm going to be much more comfortable doing that than I would be doing this other thing. And she put the work in and then got there comfortably. She's also control, so she can kind of take control of the situation, but I'll get to that in a second. So for comfort, people, others can be impatient with them. They can get frustrated with their lack of productivity. A high comfort kid might be comfortable with B's and C's. Control, again, none of these are surprises with the definition, right? They want to control themselves, others, situations. There's two subtypes for control. It can be control of everything and control of self. I see a lot of control kids, B or C. But it's usually control of everything else and not themselves. So they can be strong leaders. They can be persistent. They can be responsible. So maybe there's adaptive and maladaptive sides to these personality priorities. So we're never trying to shift them from one personality priority to another. There aren't any good ones and there aren't any bad ones. this. I mean, they're all perfectly fine. What we're trying to do is shift them from the maladaptive side to the more adaptive side. So back to control. So they avoid being out of control. They sometimes they experience a lack of spontaneity and intimacy. Others can be frustrated with them. Again, like I said, I see a lot of high control kids where they're trying to control everything around them. You know, they've had early experiences where they haven't had much control. So what I try to help in that situation is I try to help shift them to more self-control and more empowerment, so they won't feel like they're out of control when everything around them isn't under their control. Pleasing, surprise, surprise, they really want to meet the needs of others. They often are friendly rule followers. They seek to avoid rejection. They don't want to get people upset. The danger is that they often don't get their needs met. People like them at first. Who doesn't like somebody that's always trying to please you? But they get annoyed because the person's constantly seeking their approval. So, you know, you got a pleasing kid in the session when they don't want to make any decisions, or they're always asking you, what do you want to do today? What do you have planned for today? And you say, well, what do you I want to let you decide. No, you go ahead and decide, that kind of thing. So you definitely know you got a pleaser. Superiority, that person strives to be more competent than others. Again, two subtypes for that. So achiever and outdoer. They really try hard. They have a high level of achievement. They seek to avoid feelings of inferiority, which is a big piece of Adlerian, right? Others, they can feel over-responsible, overwhelmed. People feel competitive with them or inadequate. Kids will, when you get a superiority kid, they brag a lot. But it's usually from a place of deep inferiority and not feeling like they're good enough. Again, the goal with personality priorities is to help move them from maladaptive to adaptive. One of the neat challenges is helping parents to kind of see where they're coming from, their personality priorities, and how those fit well or don't fit well. You know, like you take a parent that's superiority and you get a comfort kid, holy moly. You know, the parent wants like A's plus, A plus, and the kid's like, yeah, B, C's fine. So that can be quite the challenge to get them to understand it. But it really helps to have this framework, because as the parents learn and to some degree as the kids learn a little bit, depends on the kid, right? We're not going to really teach this to little guys, or gals. I apologize that I'm using the male pronouns a lot, and that's partially just because my age program, that's all we've got. So that's what I do all day. So forgive me. Now I want to kind of talk about basic play therapy skills. So I'm trying to hit these quick. So tracking behaviors, that's just really where you are describing to the child what they're doing. You're helping them feel seen, really, right? But you're always describing it. You're not labeling anything. You're saying, oh, you're moving this through the air, or you move this from here to there, right? You don't label it, because the moment you put in a label to it, all possibilities have collapsed into that's what it is now for the kid. But if you don't label it, then it can be anything for the kid. A block could be a spaceship. A ball could be a planet. So once the kid labels it, it's like, okay, that's what it is, and you can just start calling it that. Now, restating content is just a real simple paraphrasing the child's verbalizations. Oh, you watched a movie last night. They give you a whole story. You watched a movie last night. So they feel that you're paying attention. Reflecting feelings is when you acknowledge both the obvious and the underlying emotions to what the child is expressing. You have the choice to label the emotions of the objects and the characters that they're using and expressing, or you can acknowledge their emotions. Depends on the kid. You can do either or both. If the kid's real quiet, real guarded, real insecure, maybe it'd be safe to go with the objects for a while. Returning responsibility, that is incredibly important. We want to always send the message that we believe in the child. We want them to feel that they can make decisions in the session. We want them to feel empowered in the sessions. We also don't want to ever do anything for them that they could do for themselves. Like if, you know, an example I might give is if I had like a 10-year-old and the kid's like, put my coat on me. I would return responsibility and say, hey, Johnny, I think that's something you probably can do for yourself. And then they do it and you say, hey, wow, you did it. Say, no evaluative word in there. I just gave them credit. I almost said, you did a great job, but no, that would be evaluative. We don't want to put evaluative words in there. I just want to celebrate that they did it. Now, if it's a little kid and their jacket's all tangled up and everything, I might help, but then I would give them the credit for doing that. Then finally on this slide is setting limits. So limits are incredibly important in therapy, but we don't give them until they're needed. We certainly don't go around the room and be like, oh, you can do this with this, you can do this with that, but you can't do this with that, you can't do that with that, and don't ever do this, and don't ever do that. And for a couple of reasons, right? You're the two ends of the spectrum. If you got a pleasing kid, they'll probably never do anything because they're going to be scared to death that they're going to make a mistake. And then if you got a power-based kid, you have just given him every idea of where to set up power struggles. You've done most of his work or her work for them. So careful. So setting limits, many different methods of play therapy, hopefully all of them have a way to set limits. Adlerian does have a very particular one of its own. So I'll just go over that quick. I'll just give a quick demonstration. So steps in Adlerian play therapy limit setting would be state the limit, reflect the feeling or meta-communicate about the underlying message or purpose, and then generate alternative acceptable behavior options, and then set up logical consequences. So picture this. You tell a kid, okay, Johnny, you got 2 more minutes and then it's going to be time to clean up together. And he gets this angry look on his face, and he takes the dart gun and he grabs the dart gun, he takes the dart gun, loads it, it's kind of really angry, it starts to cock it. You would say, Johnny, in the playroom, the rule is we don't shoot each other. Now, notice I said in the playroom. I didn't set up a me to him battle. I didn't say, my rule, Johnny, is that you don't shoot me with that dart gun. So I'm not battling with him. I'm just telling him the way the world works in the playroom. Then I say, I'm guessing that you're mad at me, or you're upset, or you're disappointed, depending on what I think it is, that I told you we're almost done for today. Let's think of some other ways that you can show me that you're angry, or that you can get your angry or disappointed feelings out safely. Now, when I used to describe this, I used to be like, okay, and then we give them kind of a menu of options, and then I realized that Adlerians don't do that. Terry doesn't do that. She returns the responsibility to help them make some ideas. Of course, that being said, if they need some help priming the pump, as it were, then we're there to do that for them. And then finally, logical consequences. We don't set, the consequence has to be logical. It has to be, a kid has to be able to reasonably say, oh, I understand why I lost that. Like, I don't say, the kid's pointing the dart gun at me, I don't say, that's it, you've lost Play-Doh for 3 weeks, because what's that got to do with anything? That doesn't make any sense, right? I would say, Johnny, if you choose to shoot me with that dart gun, then you choose to not play with the dart gun next session. Now, I got to remember that, right? I got to remember that for the next session, and it's got to be something that I'm able to pull through, to carry through. So yeah, so that's how you set limits in play therapy, and in Adlerian play therapy in particular. So just one more screen of this, and then we get on to some techniques, guys. So hang in there with me. So encouraging, right? Like, one of the primary tenets of Adlerian psychology is that people get discouraged, right? That you need courage to get through life, right? Right. That's one of the crucial C's, courage. Well, somebody that's struggling, they're lacking courage. So how do we give them courage? We encourage them. And that's true for me too. As far back as I can think of remembering, being aware of the whole idea of encouraging, it's always jumped out to me just how discouraged kids are when they come to treatment. Plus, think about residential, right? They've failed at just about every level possible. And I use fail loosely, right? I use it as I don't mean that they're failures, but they've struggled at each level so much so that they now need really one of the highest levels of care possible. And before this, I worked in a psych hospital, so that was the highest level of care. So I'm used to working with discouraged kids. So how do we encourage? We give credit. We notice when they do something. We notice when they take an effort. We notice when they try something that they wouldn't have done before. We notice when they get a little bit further on things. We notice their assets. We meta-communicate about it. We reflect. We talk about it. We do strengths bombardment. That might be the form of taking a t-shirt and having the kid write the things that they like about themselves or their strengths, or it might be the whole family getting together and doing that t-shirt and then wash it and the kid wears it. So just a lot of encouraging. If you do nothing else, then encourage. And I think the kid will be in a better place than when they started. So quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but dealing with questions, right? Kids have lots of questions. 4 types of questions that I want to talk about briefly. Practical questions, personal questions, relational questions, and questions about the ongoing process of play therapy. Now, what kind of answer we give is based on what do we think the underlying meaning of the problem or of the behavior is. What is the behavior? What is the meaning of the behavior? So practical questions, those are just like, hey, can I use the bathroom? How much time do we have left? What's going on? When are you going to get me for therapy again? So if I think that the kid just wants to know, they're just kind of a facts kid, just the facts. They're Joe Friday from Dragnet. If I think they're that kind of kid, then I would just give them a factual response. Our next session is Thursday at 3. If I think they're low in count and they're worried about whether or not I'm going to forget them, then I'd meta-communicate about that. I'd talk about that. I'd say, oh, you're worried that I'm going to forget about you, right? Because that's what the question really is in that case. And that's one of the things I talk to parents about all the time. Like, it's not, when little Chester or little Johnny is asking you a million questions, what are they really asking? They're asking, is everything going to be okay? So, kind of get into the underlying thing there. So now, how about personal questions? Questions about me as a person. A classic one. Do you have any kids? Right? So is their goal to connect, to lower anxiety? Is it that moment in therapy when they suddenly realize that you're a person and you're not like this animatronic thing that gets stuck in the closet at the end of the day and charged? If I think they just want to connect with me, if I think they're just nervous, then I I'm going to communicate about that. Oh, you're wondering about me as a person. And then I'm honest. If I'm going to give an answer, it's going to be an honest answer. Oh, I have 2 kids, which I do. If I think that they're trying to control the situation, the session, if I think they're just asking me a bunch of questions to avoid engaging themselves, then I'm going to communicate that without answering the question. Oh, Johnny, I'm guessing that you're asking me a lot of questions, so I don't have time to ask you questions. That kind of thing. Next, relationship questions. So questions about what's the state of the relationship between me and you, Mr. Therapist, Mr. Clint? Do you like me? So this is an interesting one, right? That usually kids ask that when they want to know how much effort should they put into this relationship. So what I would do there, what from kind of an Adlerian perspective is I would meta-communicate about it. I'm guessing that you're not always sure if people care about you, and you want me to let me know, or you want me to let you know that I care about you. Usually reassurance on that level, if the kid's that discouraged, the reassurance, oh yes, I like you. People tell him or her that all the time. We just got to let the relationship stand for itself. And then finally, the questions about the ongoing process of therapy, like what's this? Can I do this? Usually kids are either trying to set up a power struggle, they're trying to please the therapist, or they're not taking responsibility. So really, we just want to return responsibility, and we want to give them a statement that says something along the lines of, in here you can decide what that is, or you can play with that in a lot of the ways you would like to do. So just returning that responsibility. Using the child's metaphor. If they're playing and they're engaged in an activity, say they got a little piggy and the piggy's going through in the story and whatnot, I'm going to meet them from that metaphor. If I'm going to engage, I'm going to introduce a character, or I'm going to reflect back about that character. I'm not going to say, okay, Johnny, let's get straight here. That clearly that pig's you, and that goat is your mom, and that little pigeon is your brother. Let's get down to brass tacks here. I wouldn't do that. And then the whisper technique. I love the whisper technique. I don't know about any of you, but if you've ever spent time in the playroom, chances are you've been tied up or handcuffed and stuffed in the corner. So I've worked with enough kids that have had abuse histories that will put me in the corner and they'll say, Mr. Clint, try to break out. Well, good Lord, I don't know if I'm supposed to really break out or if I'm supposed to try and fail. I mean, I want to make sure in that situation, the kid's working through something. So I want to follow the kid's lead. So I'll kind of put my hand up and, kind of, hey, Johnny, do you want me to really get out? And he'll be like, Mr. Clint, I want you to really try hard, but I don't want you to be able to get out. I'll be like, okay. And I'll struggle and I'll really work hard at it, right? Because you got to really, if you're going to be in play therapy, you got to really get into it. You got to have, I couldn't do it. I tried really hard, but I couldn't do it. And then, just following their lead, right? So then finally, clean the room together or not clean the room together. And different models of therapy think different ways about this. Child-centered, don't clean up the room together. Take care of it later on. And again, because there's a systemic framework, and there is a as we talked about with the definition of play therapy, because there's a systemic theory behind it, that makes complete sense from their perspective. From an Adlerian perspective, the default is to clean the room together. We see that as creating and maintaining and strengthening the egalitarian relationship that is probably the bedrock of the Adlerian process and play therapy in general, right? It's all about the relationship, right? Now, the other thing that I thought was interesting, because I was like, okay, I'm a bit of a pleaser, so it's like, okay, Adlerians, it says clean the room together, so okay, that's what I'm going to do. But I heard Terry talking one time, and she's like, the reality is that if you don't clean up, if the kids don't help you clean the room, and all you're doing all day is cleaning up after all the different kids' messes, eventually you're gonna kind of get resentful and counter transference, right? If this kid's walking through life and they're never cleaning up after themselves, people are going to get irritated with them, right? And we're trying to help them to develop skills to bring into the real world. So where in life are they going to, and this is my own rationale, again, child-centered model is perfectly fine. Again, Adlerian fits me better, and maybe this is just the way I rationalize it. But it makes sense to me, especially because I work here at Barry Robinson. I work with predominantly, well, actually 100%, either currently military active or they have some affiliation to the military. And there's a certain structure and hierarchy, there's a certain culture there. So I think them learning to clean up after themselves is a good skill to have in those families. So how do you do that? You say, okay, as I alluded to in my example, with the limit setting, okay, Johnny, okay, Mortimer, okay, in 2 minutes, it's going to be time to clean up together. And you give them, you've decided it's time to clean up together. So then you give them the option of deciding who cleans up what. You say, okay, in 2 minutes, it's going to be time to clean up. You tell me what you want me to clean up, and you decide what you want to clean up. So I have then hopefully successfully sidestepped any power struggle that I might have. And it might just be, well, I'm going to pick up this one block, and you're going to pick up all this other stuff. And that may be okay in the early sessions with kids. And then we build up on it, or you can turn it into a game too. There's nothing wrong with that. But you don't always, just because it's the default to clean up your room together doesn't mean you always do it. If you've got like a super pleaser, or you've got a kid who is super tightly wound, you might say, no, leave it. I'll get it later. So default, but not always necessary, I would say. So let's move on to some strategies that I've used. Hopefully I'll try to go a little bit quicker, guys. Just trying to lay the framework. So designing therapeutic metaphors. So that's really when we create a story for a kid that has some parallel to a situation in their life. And it's kind of, you want to talk about counting. Well, geez, Johnny, I was thinking about you over the weekend and I created this story for you that I want to share with you. Wow, I'm important enough that Mr. Clint created a story to share with me. So when you create a therapeutic metaphor, you want to decide on the goal. You want to have a clear goal in mind. You want to decide on the medium. Does the kid like books? Do they like puppets? Do they like dance? And then you want to decide when and where the story takes place. And I'm going to give you an example of a story that took place in medieval times. So it gives the kid a little bit of emotional distance because it takes place so long ago. You want to describe the scene clearly. It needs to have parallels to the kid's story, kid's experience. You want the characters to be described clearly. You want to have problems encountered by the protagonist described in clear terms. You want them to make progress, but there needs to be obstacles. You want them to describe the resolution in concrete terms, and you want to make sure the obstacles and everything has to do with the kid's experience. And then finally, you want there to be a celebration at the end. And really, then you want to decide how you process with the child. And I often don't. I let my stories stand on their own. I usually have enough confidence in the kid that they know that I know that this, I know that they know that this is, this has to do with something, their experience. So let me just kind of paint you a little picture. So I had a kid who I felt was low in count and capable, right? Because when I'm working with kids, it's like, all right, do I want to foster a crucial C? Do I want to help shift the personality priority? So I decided that this kid was low in count and capable. So I came up with a goal. I wanted this kid at the end of the story to know that he mattered. He counted or mattered, and I wanted him to know that if he stuck with something, eventually he'd succeed. And I wanted him to kind of have a little mantra: things are hard, but not too hard, because, well, that is life. So the characters had a knight. The villain doesn't always have to be a person. The villain in this case was the obstacle course of doom, right? And again, play therapy, have fun with it, right? As long as you're respecting the child's experience and process, you can have some silly fun. And then the helper was the queen. So picture this. This knight's in front of this obstacle course, and he's been told he has to go through it, and he takes a couple steps, and he collapses, and he's crying. Queen just happens to be walking by. She sees him. She cares about him. She knows he can do it. She sees in him what he can't see in himself. So she agrees to come back every day as he's working hard to try to get through this obstacle course. So over the course of 4 days in the story, 4 days, he goes a little bit further each day, and he looks for the queen to pick on him or belittle him, which is some of the experiences that he's had in his life and some of the stuff that he does to himself. He just doesn't see that. She's always supportive. So over the course of the 4 days, he gets further and further along in the obstacle course, and he starts to see the obstacle course. He moves from it being impossible to too hard to probably too hard to hard but not too hard. And he also realizes that he matters to the queen. Now, did I say to him, hey, Johnny, the obstacle course the knight was you, the obstacle course is how you function in your day-to-day life, and the queen is your mother, your stepmother, or your mother? No, I didn't. I let the story stand on its own. And I think it was helpful. And did I get a standing ovation from him? No. Did he say, yes, you solved all my problems? No. I think his eyes got a little bit wider and he didn't blink as much. I was, man, I really nailed this one. I really knocked this one home, because I'd been working with him for a long time, and I knew how he was. Adlerian Play. I know, guys, I'm running low on time here, so I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. I'm actually almost done. Adlerian Play. So it's a little bit different than some other models of Play. I've never had any training, anything other than Adlerian Play, so I can't speak to the huge differences, but kind of let me tell you a little bit about it. Like everything, we use it to try to strengthen the crucial Cs and shift the personality priorities. And there's other things we do too, but those are the two things that I wanted to cover in this. So we use to build relationships, strengthen, modify things, teach skills, They can be self-directed, where we just let the kids create something. They can be therapist-directed, where I start with a question, show me your family, your future, show me something you're afraid of. They can also be co-created. And I know some of this is this does not fit with some other models, but again, Adlerian is all about the egalitarian relationship and working together. So within the model, this stuff fits. So when you co-create a sand tray, some of the sand trays that I've co-created with a kid, it might be a strengths-based sand tray. It might be a staking turns, putting in things that represent a strength or a quality or characteristic that child has. It might be on what makes a good friend versus somebody that struggles to be a good friend. It might be helping them to understand the difference between maybe a parent of origin and a current parent caregiver that's got kind of conflated in their mind. Sometimes in sand trays, we'll ask for permission to move things around. We ask for tours. So it can be dynamic. It can be static. Really powerful. It's just such a powerful medium. And I always joke, before I had any type of training at all in Adlerian sand tray, and we had a sand tray here, I always just thought sand tray was for reenacting World War II battles, because that's all the kids ever did, until I kind of really had a framework for working with them on that. Fortunately, I've been doing that for years now. Quickly, mutual storytelling. So we hit the kid, we invite the child, we always give them a choice, right? We say, I would like you to tell me a story. Or would you tell me a story? But there's always a choice. We never give the kids the illusion of choice. If they choose not to do something, then we come up with something else. But anyway, so after the child tells the story, the therapist tells it with more constructive middle and an end. And of course, we don't say that. Okay, kid gets done with the story, and we're like, all right, Johnny, I'm gonna fix your story for you. We don't do that. We say, okay, I'm gonna tell you a story. And we start off with the same story, and then we shift the middle and the end. And again, we're looking for crucial C's and personality priorities that we might be able to shift. So just let me give you a quick example. Kid tells me, I just made this up for the presentation. Kid tells me, which really I pretty much did with everything. But anyway, my examples I made up. So the kid tells me, a kid might come in and tell me a story about a character who's in his room playing with Legos, and a sibling comes in and steals them. And the kid says to himself, man, if my mom cared about me, she'd come and she'd help me and she'd make my brother give them back to me. And obviously she doesn't care about me, and cries himself to sleep. Well, what crucial C's are we hearing here? I mean, he's not, he certainly doesn't think he counts. And that's kind of the one that jumps out to me. Actually, they're probably all kind of low in that case. He doesn't really feel capable. He doesn't know how mom is going to handle things if he goes and talks to her. So maybe his courage is low too. But anyway, so I might retell the story where the brother comes in, takes the Legos, and the brother leaves, and I might have the character say, "Wow, I can't believe you did that. That wasn't fair. My brother shouldn't come in and take my stuff. I bet mom will help me if I go ask her and I go talk to her. I'm going to go talk to her." And then he leaves and he goes talk and talks to the mom character. And she goes and solves the problem. And then he says, wow, mom is really there to help me. I am important to her, or whatever. And that's the end of the story. So everyday games. Now, may I remind you, play therapy, it's about playing. You can do it with a sock puppet. You can do it with a stick, a box. I mean, play is play, right? So, but one of my colleagues in LEPT and Terry Compton co-wrote a book on using everyday games in play therapy. You can find that at the LEPT website. That's at the end of the presentation if you're interested in it. It's just a self-published book. I shouldn't say just. It's a self-published book, so you'd have to get it from their website. So I just wanted to kind of just talk about a couple of everyday games. So like Jenga. Jenga Could be used to improve attention. It could be used to help kids consider consequences, right? Pull the wrong one. Could be practicing having limited control, right? You can only do your piece. You can't keep it up by force. You can't keep the blocks up by force of will. It can be to practice a positive attitude towards winning and losing. Flicking chickens. I may or may not have put that in there because I like saying flicking chickens. So that can be good for, so basically flicking chickens, as I understand it, it's kind of like darts for the ground. You take these chickens and you fling them at these targets. So good for connecting. It's a silly game, right? How can you be serious? How can you take things with rubber chickens too seriously? Social skills around taking turns and being honest about points, being silly, creating positive experiences for families or peers that by the time it gets residential, there aren't a lot of positive experiences going on from day to day. And then finally, Uno attacks. I don't know if you're all familiar with Uno attacks, but it's basically Uno with this machine that instead of picking up a card just from the deck, you press the button and it either fires out no cards, one card, a ton of cards, right? Children with control issues, right? So, but it's also good for kids that have maladaptive pleasing issues, right? So they got to please you by following the rules, but they also gotta like put down like the mean cards, like draw 2 or draw 4 cards. So they're kind of stuck on a double bind, which certainly, you can meta-communicate. You can talk about that. Oh, this is really hard for you to put this down, but you know what? And you know what? It's a game, that kind of thing. So you're just normalizing that process. So that's another good one. So if you want to learn more, and I believe this presentation is on the website, but if you want to learn about play therapy in particular, go to the Association for Play Therapy website. That's a4pt.org. Or if you want to learn about Adlerian Play Therapy in particular, that would be the League of Extraordinary Adlerian Play Therapists. Just love saying that left. And that's at adlerianplaytherapy.com. And then books, great books. If you want to learn about Adlerian Play Therapy in particular, again, Partners in Play. If you want to learn about play therapy in general, another great book is Doing Play Therapy from Building a Relationship to Facilitating Change. So really good books for helping you get a good overview of play therapy. And now it's time for questions. And I have this quote here, and this doesn't mean that I'm not going to answer questions. I'm just going to say it depends. But if you've ever spent any time around Terry, pretty much every question that she answers starts with, well, it depends. And again, that's because Adlerian really tries to tailor its interventions for children. So please, questions.
Okay, Clint, what do you recommend for online play treatment?
That's a good question. Well, I tell you what, we have, and gosh, I don't want this to be a big commercial, but a couple of months ago, or back last fall, Terry got together. I'm guessing the question is about what kind of interventions that we would use for the online sessions. If that's the answer, we did a training. I think it was a 4-hour training through LEPT for interventions for telehealth. And there's actually a book. I don't know if you guys have been able to see me, but there's a spiral bound book saying that's called Adlerian Play Therapy Interventions for Telehealth. It was edited by Terry Cotman, and a bunch of us LEPT people submitted different techniques and whatnot. You can find that on the LEPT website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Clint. So strategies you use to address transference and countertransference during play therapy?
That's a tricky one. Oh boy, that's a good one. I mean, Adlerian, I don't know how much we really have. Of course, that's always there. Really, I would say meta-communicate. You're constantly trying to help them draw awareness and insight, right? Like insight is one of the keys to Adlerian. Stage 3 is developing insight. So, okay, so stage 1 is developing a relationship, and then stage 2 is really kind of conceptualizing the lifestyle. And stage 3 is helping them to develop insight into the lifestyle. And then stage 4 is reorganization and re-education. So transference and countertransference. So what we would do there is we would meta-communicate. So we would talk about it. Like, I'm guessing that you do this, or I'm guessing that you do that. And then the other thing that we, again, the other way that we kind of talk about the process is that we might spit in their soup, right? It's kind of a silly way to say confront them a little bit to kind of address some of those things. But the other thing is just talk about it, right? I mean, I think we've all had experiences where, at least I have, where a kid will say to me, "You remind me of my uncle." And what's my first question? Well, do you like him? Is he a nice guy? Because if he's not, I really got to get in front of that, right? I mean, do I remind them of the uncle that sexually abused them? Do I remind them of their best friend uncle? Do I remind them of their uncle that just got killed in a car accident yesterday? So I would say talk about it, really.
Okay, the next question, can play therapy be modified for adults?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Play therapy is new, right? So absolutely it can. I mean, Adlerian, so here's the thing, right? So play therapy is this big giant umbrella, right? And it grows out of models that have either been created around, been created for kids, or models that have been used with kids, like Adlerian, right? Adlerian you can use across the lifespan. It's just always been used across the lifespan. Person-centered you can use across the lifespan, but absolutely. And one of the neat things, anytime you use a method or a medium that you get people moving, you just move them right around those resistances, psychodrama, play therapy, what have you. So absolutely.
Okay, here's another really good question. Are parents given the tools to use play therapy when the child is to be discharged?
To use play therapy. Okay, so that is interesting. Okay, so depends on the model. Child-centered has filial play therapy, and it has a couple of other models where they basically teach the child or teach the parents how to engage in play therapy. Terry has talked about maybe trying to do something like that eventually with Adlerian. But Adlerian really is what we try to give the parents is through consultation, we try to give them a set of skills it's not play therapy per se, but it's stuff that we would do in the playroom. We talk about how to set limits. We talk about who owns the problem. We talk about being aware of the crucial C's and the personality priorities. And we talk about how to set limits, right? Because one of the things I tell them is, especially while they're here, is this is kind of how I'm teaching. This is how I'm getting Johnny or Herbert or whatever used to responding, right? So I will teach them, this is how I set limits, and this is how he responds to it. So it can be, yeah.
Okay, but normally we try to discharge to.
To discharge for here, no, but we'll have parents be part of play sessions. I mean, I have done sessions with parents where I try to make it playful, right? I mean, because I want the kids to enjoy it and I want the parents to enjoy it. So I've brought parents into family sessions and done Mother May I've done, putting Lego things together. Really all sorts of playful things, red light, green light, to practice all those things. So certainly, and I do certainly encourage parents to play with their kids. Even just for a few minutes a week, 20 minutes twice a week.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just don't overpromise and underdeliver. I wouldn't expect a parent to do it for 20 minutes every day, because parents are busy, right? So have 1 or 2 times a week where the kid can really depend on, they're going to be the center of your attention.
Okay. Thanks, Clint.
you.
Are there any other questions from anyone? I really want to thank you again for joining us today, and hopefully we're going to have a part 2 of Clint's show, of his webinar, hopefully in the next, I don't know, within the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.